Hi there, and welcome to Saving Ophelia. My name is Thijs, and this is Ophelia. She's about 70 years old, and as you can see, she's in need of a bit of TLC, which is why we're about to cast off and head out for a slipway. While Ophelia's paintwork does leave something to be desired, that's not why we need to get her hauled out of the slipway. Now, she sprung a leak about a year ago due to an incorrectly installed pit lock, and since I don't like the thought of a boat with a 220 liters a minute hole in her hull, only kept closed by a wooden plug, she needs to get her feet dry so we can weld a more permanent solution in place. Now, I know there's nothing quite as permanent as a temporary solution that works, but I don't have the nerves to leave the wooden plug in place. This is all new stuff to me, so it's quite likely that I messed things up or that you see a better solution than I did. If that's the case, please leave a comment in the thread below the video so I can see what you're thinking. Speaking of new, the cameraman for this little trip clearly isn't me. I'm way too busy looking important aboard Ophelia. Instead, I shanghaied my 11-year-old son, who's only ever recorded stop motion before, so please be patient with the shaky cam and just pretend that I'm attempting to be all artsy and stuff. Now, the reason Ophelia is being towed here isn't Ophelia's engine. The engine should work just fine, at least it did in the fall when I last had it fired up. The reason we're being towed is because I was a dumbass and I left the control panel that I built previously for the engine at home. I was tinkering with the panel to fix a minor point of annoyance. I'll show you exactly what I did in an upcoming episode. In my, not so humble opinion, it's quite clever. And then it completely slipped my mind to bring the panel when we left for the haul out. Fortunately, the people working at the harbour know what they're doing and that people mess up, so they had a tow at the ready. In previous episodes, I've mentioned other options to get Ophelia out of the water, mainly the shipyard right next door, which has a 30-ton plus crane at the end of the harbour. Unfortunately though, they didn't have a vacant cradle or trailer that could fit Ophelia, and without that, they won't be able to move my tall and slightly curvy girl around on the hard. So, as you say in Danish, I had to bite the sour apple and commit to coughing up the money for the slipway. By my calculations, the haul out itself is gonna cost me around 1,000 euros or dollars if you're that way inclined, and 100 monetary units of the same kind just used per 24 hours. So, once Ophelia's out of the drink, the pecuniary clock starts ticking. Aside from the pecuniary issues, Ophelia's dimensions are unusual enough to cause a few minor practical issues. While Ophelia's draft and weight combined with the lack of a cradle means that we can't use any other options in the slipway to haul out, she's also narrow enough that she can only just be secured thoroughly between the support columns and the slipway sled. So Ophelia needs to be centered quite precisely transversely. Fortunately though, Ophelia's full keel means that we don't have to worry too much about the lengthwise placement. There are wooden support blocks on the top side of the slipway sled for Ophelia to sit on, and Ophelia's keel is long enough that she's assured to rest on a minimum of 2 blocks and very likely on 3. With Ophelia positioned correctly on top of the sled, it's time to start the actual haul out. If you look very carefully, you can see that the entire sled is moving towards the right, and Ophelia with it. With all the blabbering and pointing going on, it might look like I'm coordinating the work to secure Ophelia on the sled, but I'm really not. The real mastermind behind the operation is the harbour master himself, who's guarding everything from the front of Ophelia. The trip up the slope is very slow, but as the harbour master said repeatedly, low speed, small damage, high speed, large damage. Or as they say in the armed forces, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Either way, this was about the least exciting fun ride ever. That is, if you discount the excitement of seeing the actual state of the hole for the first time in 3 years as Ophelia slowly rises out of the water. I'll need to give the cameraman a good telling off, because the camera work makes it a bit hard to see the state of the hole. But there is quite a lot of growth on there. However, the growth is clumpy and not an evenly distributed layer across the hull of Ophelia as it was when we last hauled her out. I'm just kidding about turning off the cameraman, of course. You usually get what you pay for, and in this case, I'm probably lucky to even have recording, as I didn't pay the kid anything. Seriously though, the clumping of the growth is a bit surprising, but my guess is that some of the old anti-fouling is still active, at least where we scratched the surface on the last haul out and exposed a, well, kind of fresh, or at least not previously exposed surface. Due to the slope on the bottom of the keel and the slope of the slipway, and thus the slipway sled, Ophelia decided to settle on just one of the supporting blocks and then rock back and forth between two others. So as soon as it was possible to do so without getting wet feet, a few wedges were hammered in between the supporting blocks and the keel, much to the relief of those of us taking the ride on top of Ophelia. That particular rocking motion was causing us to begin to feel slightly queasy. Getting seasick while aboard a boat that wasn't even sailing anymore would be quite embarrassing. Take a good look at this tool here. You'll see it again in use soon, and if you ever want to clean heavy growth off a steel hull, that's the ticket. So, with Ophelia out of the water, the first job of the day is to get a hull cleaned. And, well, she's quite messy, could be worse, but I guess we'll take a close look before I get started. And then I'll set up a pot so you can, well, enjoy me toiling away here. As you can see, we have quite a lot of growth, but not nearly as much as I'd expect from, well, 2 years without any kind of protection. And it's not very well stuck on here. It comes off quite easily. So, shouldn't be too hard of a job to get it all off. A lot of interesting stuff around here though. No oysters this time around, but plenty of mussels. Anyways, I'd better get started on the cleaning part. As you can see, the tool I mentioned is really just a scraper with a fairly thick and sturdy blade on a long handle, but it sure does make short work of even the really hard growth such as barnacles, and the mussels just come flying off. Now, I've drowned out the original sound for the next part for a couple of reasons. First off, my younger brother, the engineer, is on the screen and he's not too fond of the camera and recording stuff. Secondly, there's just about zero chance you'll get what we're gibbering about in Danish. After all, only a few % of those watching are actually fellow Danes. The short version, though, is that although we expected the hull to be about 6mm thick, possibly with a bit gone missing due to corrosion, we found that the hull is 4mm and change. So the previous sales description, which I have on paper, is not exactly accurate. Who'd have thunk it, a used boat salesman putting a slightly more positive spin on the construction of the boat he's getting a commission from selling than reality can support. That's not to blame the guy that I bought Ophelia from, though. He was quite explicit when he said that he hadn't confirmed the old sales document and couldn't verify the veracity of the claimed hull thicknesses. As you can see, the hull cleaned up nicely and there's no corrosion around the hole for the pitlock. So next up is the repair itself. I'll put that in a separate video though, so I hope you'll join me again next week for some boat work and a bit of, well, porn adjacent entertainment. Oh, and do give this video a like on your way out if you feel like helping the channel. It'll be much appreciated. Thank you.